I'm shocked, really, honestly. I'm shocked that Eric would make these kind of blanket statements that are just so easy to disprove. And wait until you see Dr. Cooper-Vasser and Dr. Eldiri's presentation at the CDC, the Committee on Immunization Practices presentation, which is going to refute almost everything he said about the safety of the vaccines and this 2-month number. And I mean, does he know how long mod RNA stays in the blood, including with the lipid nanoparticle around it? Does he have any idea? He's going to be shocked. It's been measured 706 days after it was injected, which is almost 2 years. And it causes ribosomal frame shifting, which I'll explain what that is in just a little bit. But, you know, all these statements he's making are completely false. And another thing that Dr. Topol said a few minutes ago, and he'll probably say it again, but let me just address it now. He's talking about anti-vaxxers being anti-science. That is going a little bit too far in the derogatory realm, because the data that I'm going to present to you, which is certainly would be under the anti-vax broad category, because it shows how dangerous these vaccines are, but it's all based on science. So anti-vax doesn't go with anti-science at all, according to these doctors Cooper-Vasser and Eldiri, for example. And, you know, let me just give you an example. He has said 2 or 3 times that he got in a fight with Merck over Vioxx. Now, I don't think it's fair to him to say that he's anti-medicine, because he recognized that there was a problem with Vioxx. He doesn't want to be labeled with the derogatory label of being an anti-medicine person. I mean, he's a cardiologist. He uses medicine all the time. Wow. And to say that he's anti-science because of it, too, would be incorrect. I'm sure that he had scientific data to try to prove his point against Merck. And look at me. I mean, I was an MIT physics major. You can't get any more scientific than that. It just doesn't exist anywhere. And I have a lot of problems with these vaccines. I'm telling you, they're full of toxicities. And to call me anti-science, compared to him and Sam, would be ridiculous. So I think he's loose with his descriptions of these people that are trying to do their best to help the public, and they certainly aren't anti-science. Now, I will say that when Vivek Murthy worked with Nick Clegg of Facebook to remove the pages on Facebook of certain different kinds of doctors that were saying some really strange things about COVID, especially at the beginning, I agree. A lot of it was non-scientific junk, in my opinion. But they still have a right to say it, and we let the public decide whether they're going to listen to those kind of people or not. But you can't put everybody under an umbrella that doesn't agree with this COVID-19 vaccination. As a matter of fact, it's based on the genome that Fan Wu supposedly sequenced from a 41-year-old Chinese man, one of the Huanan Seafood Wet Market alumni, because he sent that genome sequence to GenBank and GISAID on January 10th of 2020, as Dr. Topol pointed out. And that was the genome sequence that was used to create the vaccines. And I have a ton of stuff to say about that. because they inserted some sequences from, according to GenBank, that, for example, Moderna had patented in 2017 before the whole farce began. And it had the furin cleavage site in that sequence and other things. So we know they put that in deliberately and wanted to get caught because they wanted to make the world think, and this is explained very well in my book. This is the key to the whole book. They wanted to make the world think that these things were made in a lab and it escaped or was sent out from the Wuhan Institute of Virology and ended up at the Hunan Seafood Wet Market, when of course the whole thing was planned from the beginning, and so was getting caught. And they did not get away with it because there are some people out there who are a little smarter than the evil people who did this. And I can't wait for them all to get caught. So I'll leave it there for now, and I hope that you'll read the book that explains it crystal clear what they did. And then they got all these people to sell it to the public, that it was created at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. What a bunch of nonsense. It was not either from the Hunan Seafood Wet Market Intermediate Animal, and it was not from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It was totally made up. There was never any SARS-2 virus. I promise you there was not. They tried to trick people into thinking there was, and it was put together at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, they did do gain-of-function experiments over there, which was part of the deception, but there was no virus that went all over the world and caused atypical pneumonia in everybody. There's no SARS-CoV-2 virus. It's just absurd. And I can defend it and prove it very easily to everyone. But let's continue now with this very interesting deep dive into this podcast from Sam Harris and Eric Topol and all the other things associated with it, and the misinformation that's being spread by these two well-meaning gentlemen and many, many other people. They have a lot more to say, and I'm going to go after them hook, line, and sinker, and you're going to learn so much more about what really happened during COVID.
But so even if we were going to give a hostage to paranoia here and grant that we don't understand the long-term implications of the vaccines, you still have this head-to-head comparison with the actual disease of COVID, which makes the vaccines look comparatively benign, right? Like, so if you're worried about the long-term possibilities of vaccine...
No, it doesn't, Sam. The long-term disease of COVID is atypical pneumonia, which can be treated with antibiotics most of the time. And a lot of times people go home on PO antibiotics, and that's the end of it. Try not to make COVID out to something worse than it really is. It's atypical pneumonia.
You should be doubly worried about the long-term possibilities of having caught COVID without the benefit of having been vaccinated. You know, if you're worried about, people, there's people circulating an article that suggests that the spike protein born of the mRNA vaccines could be bad for the blood-brain barrier, right? But what does COVID do to the blood-brain barrier, right?
Firstly, that is absurd.
All right, now, the first thing we need to say about the blood-brain barrier, you're going to have to wait for volume 2 of my book, which is all about the timelines involved in this stuff. And my very close friend Spartacus, whom you may or may not know, and if you don't, you should look him up and start following him. He's a brilliant guy, and he wrote a guest timeline about the issue of how long the United States government and various nefarious groups within it have been trying to damage our blood-brain barrier so that very small entities can cross the blood-brain barrier, as opposed to something like Neuralink, where you have to actually do a craniotomy to put the device inside someone's cranium. If they're able to damage the blood-brain barrier to a significant degree, a certain degree, say it that way, they'll be able to give people IVs and affect their brain action potentials. And Sam, you're an expert in this, so you should be very, very interested in this. And I'll leave it for now at that. But when Volume 2 comes out, Sam, I hope you're first in line to get a copy, or I'll send you one, to read about what's been going on with this goal to control behavior in individuals by damaging their blood-brain barrier. You'll find it fascinating. Let's continue on. And remember, you're talking about COVID doing something to the blood-brain barrier. First of all, there's a lipid pathway for lipids to get in through the blood-brain barrier. All right, and lipid nanoparticles are lipid. And we have found, regardless of what Eric's going to say soon, we have found mod RNA in the brain, in the central nervous system. Okay, so just bear with me. You're going to see it all in the Volume 2 of Sanction the COVID Murders. And we've already found mod RNA, again, in the central nervous system and brain. And I expect you to take a look at the research if you don't believe me. It's going to be presented by not only Dr. Cooper-Vosser, but Dr. Eldery in the next video that I show you. Excuse me.
I saw this through commentary that Brett Weinstein put out, that people who get a headache as a side effect of a COVID vaccine, which is not uncommon to get a headache, that could be brain fog from the mRNA getting into the brain. This is totally unsubstantiated. Total. And to try to make a parallel where the true brain fog, that is the cognitive effect, a hit to people who do get COVID, so-called long COVID or long haulers, which is happening in at least 10% of the people with confirmed infections. And, I know many people, colleagues, people I work with, who are affected by long COVID, who have brain fog and have profound fatigue, have difficulty breathing, can't even go on a long walk that they used to be, healthy and athletic. So for anyone to posit that people who get a headache is having mRNA going into the brain, that is totally irresponsible. It's reckless, it's sick, and it casts unnecessary doubts to these people, the innocent. It's in a way, Sam, I have to say it's predatory. It's taking people who want to believe in a conspiracy or don't know what to believe and making vaccines look like they're intended to harm with no evidence whatsoever.
Okay, I've got to show you the Cooper-Vosser and Eldery presentation of their and others' research on the mod RNA going into the brain. It's time to do that. It's also going to explain the way that the vaccines damage the immune system, cause ribosomal frame shifting, etc. This is the mother lode of refutation of the positions that Sam and Dr. Topol have taken this entire podcast. And so let me load that now and let's watch it together. And it'll really explain, or it will serve as proof that I've been right about all these things. And by the way, I told you at the beginning that I prove everything I say. I don't say something if I can't prove it. And it's worked very well for me, this entire podcast and through these 2 books I've written. and I hope that you'll take this to heart and understand my position. I take my reputation as a heart surgeon very seriously, and I take my reputation as a scientist very seriously, and a former physics professor. So I'm not about to ruin it, especially when I may be on death's door here. I'm not about to ruin it by putting out a video that I haven't verified is correct. And I don't know how long I'm going to last. I may or may not get through this. I won't know for 3 more months whether the treatment even worked. But if I don't get through it, which we don't know yet, but if I don't get through this, these books and this video, even this podcast is part of my legacy. And I don't want to be proved wrong about what I say. So please watch these 2 videos with me. I'll stop it occasionally to help you understand what they're talking about. But if Sam or Dr. Topol are watching this, please watch this and realize all these blanket statements you've made along the way are incorrect. And no, you can't say that all of the side effects are known by 2 months after the injection. It just doesn't make any sense. We've got one side effect that increases with the number of boosters you take. And so listen to this and learn from it, please.
Charlotte, you're on mute.
My apologies. We'll start that again.
Thank you.
Dr. Wafik, Alderi, and myself will be summarizing 4 major areas related to terms of reference 6, 7, and 8. Next slide, please. First, for immune changes, literature on both science-specific and non-specific immune effects was reviewed, focusing on the cumulative short and long-term impact of repeated boosting. This is an area where data are still emerging. Second, on biodistribution, the clinical and scientific information was reviewed, both from the literature and from the FDA. Third, frame shifting was tracked given its potential to alter protein products and downstream immune responses. And finally, for impurities, published and unpublished data about residual DNA in existing mRNA products was reviewed. Next slide. There is evidence that COVID vaccination, especially after multiple doses, is associated with a range of immune changes. One of the best documented findings is IgG4 class switching, reported in a seminal study by Arang and colleagues. They showed that individuals receiving Pfizer's BNT162b2 mRNA vaccine developed anti-spike IgG4 antibodies and IgG4 switched memory B cells within 6 months of their second dose, with levels rising further after a third dose. Importantly, these changes were linked to reduced antibody effector function consistent with IgG4's role in promoting immune tolerance. Other studies have reported the production of anti-idiotype antibodies and persistent alterations in IgG glycosylation patterns. These structural modifications can influence how antibodies interact with immune cells, tipping the balance toward either inflammation or tolerance.
Okay, I just want to say a quick word about anti-idiotype antibodies. These are antibodies to the FAB portion on a different antibody. I brought this up when I did my discussions with Dr. Bhattacharya, which, by the way, I'm going to break up and put on the internet now, on YouTube, as I make this new channel. And he said, "Oh gosh, don't get into that. That's too detailed and so forth." And I said, "Okay," at the time, but it's very important, you know. It's damaging, and it's going against the FAB portion of antibodies that are elicited to fight infection with these things. So it is important, and it's just one of many immune changes from COVID vaccination that I wonder if Sam even knows about, as he, or even Dr. Topol, as they push people to get this vaccine and cause damage to the immune system. I mean, I don't think these guys even know about this stuff. Not all of it, anyway.
Beyond antibody changes, vaccination has also been linked to long-lasting shifts in cytokine profiles, with elevated inflammatory cytokines persisting for months. These immune alterations may contribute to an increased risk of recurrent or persistent infections in some individuals. Finally, work from Akiko Iwasaki's lab at Yale has demonstrated cellular immune changes, including reductions in circulating memory and effector CD4 T cells, alongside increases in TNF-alpha positive CD8 T cells following vaccination. Next slide, please. These and other studies raise questions about the persistence of the immunological changes associated with mRNA vaccination, along with their long-term clinical significance and consequences. And because of the long-term changes in cytokine profiles and T-cell ratios observed in vaccinated individuals, more research is needed to evaluate vaccine effects on shaping both innate and adaptive immunity over the long term. Next slide. For biodistribution, Pfizer did not use the actual spike mRNA product in their studies. Instead, they substituted an luciferase reporter mRNA packaged in the same lipid nanoparticles. This approach allowed them to track where the mRNA traveled in rodents. The studies showed that following intramuscular injection, most of the mRNA remained at the site of injection, but there was also notable levels detected in the liver. Despite the limitations of this approach, which can underestimate low-level or transient distributions to other tissues, it nevertheless showed that the vaccine components do not remain confined to the injection site. Next slide. For Moderna,
by the way, I was the first to bring this to the public's attention, and I did it as a speculation before the vaccines came out, because I'd heard all these UC San Francisco School of Medicine professors saying that the vaccine was going to stay in the upper arm where it was injected and swearing by it. And I said, that does not make a lot of sense. I'd be very concerned that these lipid nanoparticles would get into the lymphatics and then dump into the circulatory system at the thoracic duct and go all over the body. And it turns out I was right. The professors at UC San Francisco School of Medicine were all wrong about this. And I wonder how many people would have taken the vaccine if they had known these lipid nanoparticles were going to go all over the body, cause the major histocompatibility complex CD8 T killer interaction to destroy the cell that's producing the foreign protein. Wow, you really have to wonder about all the deception that was going on. And never trust them again, basically. I mean, it's just incredible that they would go to all these ends to not let the public know what was really going to happen with these vaccines. This platform had never been used before in people, and they didn't even test the amplification process group of vaccines before they injected them into all the way down to 6-month-old babies. It just blows my mind. Wait till we talk about SV40 promoters and enhancers going into 6-month-old babies, and any age really.
no dedicated biodistribution study was performed with the COVID mRNA itself. Instead, data was provided from a surrogate product, a CMV mRNA, mRNA 1647, which used the same lipid nanoparticle formulation. In their rat study, after intramuscular injections, high levels of the mRNA were detected at the injection site, but also in multiple organs, such as the draining lymph nodes, spleen, eye, and liver. Lower levels were also found across a wide range of tissues, including the heart, lungs, testes, and brain.
Okay, we just heard Eric Topol talk about the evil there is in someone saying that the messenger RNA vaccine product payload could be found in the brain. And of course, the very first set of research I show you shows that sure, it's been found in the brain. 2 to 4% of plasma levels, as she's going to say. So there is trace crossing of the blood-brain barrier. Jesus. And he's saying it's impossible and it's terrible to say it and all this. It's absolutely true.
Importantly, this study clearly showed that the mRNA can cross the blood-brain barrier. Next slide. Consistent with what is seen in animal studies, the vaccine mRNA and its spike protein have been detected in humans across multiple tissues, including blood, lymph nodes, the heart, and even the brain.
So just glancing at this right now, the CNS, up to 17 months after the injection? That's a year and a half almost. I'll tell you. In the blood, the modified RNA has been found 23 months. That's almost 2 years after the injection. I mean, it's incredible. And again, Eric Topol thinks all the side effects are gone in 2 months. No.
These findings make it clear that the mRNA does not remain confined to the injection site. Importantly, persistence has been documented well beyond the initial hours or days, lasting weeks in some tissues, and in certain studies detectable for many months. Next slide. To summarize the biodistribution data, it's important to note that neither Moderna nor Pfizer used their actual commercial mRNA vaccine products in the preclinical biodistribution studies.
Okay, so neither Pfizer nor Moderna used the actual commercial product in their testing? Oh my Lord.
Instead, they relied on surrogate construct packaged in same or similar lipid nanoparticles. Second, the results of those studies showed that the mRNA and lipid nanoparticles were not confined to the injection site. Systemic distribution was observed with evidence that the mRNA can cross the blood-brain barrier. Consistent with these findings, studies in humans have confirmed that vaccine mRNA can be detected in multiple tissues, including lymph nodes, the heart, the central nervous system, and blood. Finally, persistence is not just short-term. In some reports, mRNA has been detected for weeks to months, and in certain cases, as long as 706 days post-vaccination. Taken together, these data highlight that biodistribution is broad and persistence is longer than initially expected, raising important questions and concerns for ongoing research and safety monitoring. Next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Cooperwasser. The work group focused on a couple of other areas that I will describe. The first is ribosomal frame shifting, which is a mechanism used by viruses to express different open reading frames that can help viruses progress infections. The nucleoside modified mRNA with pseudouridine.
I'm glad that Dr. Eldiri finally described what actually gets injected into you, the payload of the lipid nanoparticle, which is the pseudouridination of uracil residues. He finally said it, whereas everybody, including these two, and certainly Sam and Eric Topol, have been calling it mRNA the whole time, and it's not. It's modified RNA, and the reason you get all these horrible problems with it, including the longevity, is because it's modified. It doesn't denature like mRNA does. Those things denature on the order of minutes, hours, days, weeks, something like that. And we're talking about these things staying in the blood and other places, the brain, for a year and a half, up to 2 years, wreaking havoc. And so thank you, Dr. Eldiri, for finally calling it what it is. It's a terrible oversight of everyone not to call this thing what it really is, the pseudouridination of uracil residues, causing it to be called mod RNA. N1 methyl pseudouridine is what it is. They're just putting a methyl group on the uracil, I think, to call it this. But it causes it does reduce inflammation, which is a good thing, but it causes it to last really long in the body. And, having messenger RNA denature quickly might be nature's way of saying, if there's a mistake, at least the thing will be gone in a few hours. But this thing stays in for years, up to 2 years so far that we've discovered. It may be longer than that. Producing toxic proteins, either from ribosomal frame shifting or the spike protein itself, which we don't really know what it is. It has nothing to do with a round virus with things sticking off of it. That's what everybody thinks are the so-called spikes. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know what that spike protein is. It was put on these, the code for it was put in these mRNA vaccines in the genome, and it's causing something in the body that's nefarious and damaging, clearly. So, please, everybody, start calling this thing mod RNA so we can get down to the brass tacks of what's really the problem here. Now, let me just explain a little bit what frame shifting is. Let's say that you have a sentence, the dog is brown. And you have a frame shift of -1. It moves it over one letter. Then you've got TH, which is not a word. EDO is the next word, which is Edo, that's not a word. GIS, which is not a word. BRO, which is not a word. WN, which is not a word. So if someone were to read that sentence after the -1 frame shift, you couldn't make any sense out of it. It would read Edo, Gis, Bro, Wun. That's that. No one would interpret that as the dog is brown. So if you move these things over a little bit with codons, each 3 of which map to a specific amino acid, and you move that frame over by 1 unit in a -1 frame shift, for example, because it was pseudouridinated, you are going to map to a bunch of different amino acids and make a nonsense protein, the toxicity of which is unknown. Do you see the danger there? I doubt Sam even knows what ribosomal frame shifting is, and he's still trying to put these vaccines on the arms of 6-month-old babies and adults.
Increases frame shifting significantly, up to tenfold. Next slide. And there's evidence that these unintended off-target proteins generate an immune response in humans, along with antibody production. The immunogenic or toxic properties of the non-spike proteins is unknown.
Okay, the toxic properties of the non-spike proteins is unknown. We don't even know what the properties of these nonsense proteins are. And by the way, there is a picture here that helps you understand what ribosomal frame shifting is. Most people that have taken biology know that there's things called codons, which is 3 bases in messenger RNA that map to amino acids, which get joined together to make a protein. So UCA, uracil cytosine adenine, maps to serine. And ACG, adenine, cytosine, guanine, maps to threonine, and UUU maps to phenylalanine. UGA, if I can see it correctly without glasses, maps to leucine. Okay? Etc. Now, that's fine, and that's what you get as you go down the line until there's a frame shift. And then you're going to get CGG, which maps to arginine. Arginine isn't even up in here. And G, guanine, uracil maps to valine, and valine isn't in the upper row. So as you can see, after the frame shift, you've got a nonsense protein being formed there. And we don't know what the toxic properties of it are. Very, very dangerous.
And the health consequences of prolonged and persistent non-spike protein production have not been studied. Next slide. Another issue I'd like to bring your attention to involves multiple...
Okay, this is a huge problem. Finding impurities in the vials that were injected into people. And some of it was put in there on purpose by the vaccine companies, but did not report it to the FDA. And so they are trying to get away with murder here by putting SV40 promoters and enhancers in their vaccine. And SV40 stands for simian vacuolating virus number 40. And when a promoter gets incorporated into the DNA of the recipient in just the wrong place, it can cause the expression of an oncogene. And as we all know, I hope, onc means cancer. Oncology is the study of cancer. An oncologist is a doctor that deals with cancer, etc. And thank God for Kevin McKernan, who's ranked number 2 on that list there, or is listed number 2. Thank you to Kevin, who's another MIT guy. Thank you to Kevin for sequencing some vials of the vaccine and letting everyone know not only that there were SV40 promoters and enhancers in the Pfizer product, but also the amount of contamination with DNA that was in the product. Because you're going to see in the next slide, I believe, the amount of contamination in those vaccines that were injected into everyone were up to 628 times the amount that's allowed by the FDA. It's almost impossible to believe that they would approve something with 628 times the contamination in the product, in the commercial product, than they have allowed. I mean, who is approving these things? Think about the corruption there. Let's let Dr. Eldery explain it.
Reports of DNA impurities in Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccine vials. The most recent report came from Spiker et al., where they looked at 32 vials, including 16 unique vaccine lots, and found evidence of fragmented DNA, plasmid DNA in both Pfizer and Moderna vials. And in all Pfizer vials, they found SV40 enhancer origin of replication that was not detected in any of the Moderna vials. Next slide. So there are some differences between the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines.
Okay, this is a very important slide because, a lot of people out there are wondering, did they make a mistake by getting Moderna instead of Pfizer or Pfizer instead of Moderna, and they want to know what the differences are. Now, I just want to say a few things about this. It was the Pfizer product that had the SV40 promoters and enhancers in it. So if you got Moderna, you don't have that problem of the SV40 enhancers and promoters. And the SV40 promoter incorporating itself into your DNA and causing you to get cancer by the expression of an oncogene in the future. However, on the Moderna side, believe it or not, the impurities reached up to 6,280 nanograms per dose when the FDA limit is 10 nanograms. God. So 628 times the allowed amount for Pfizer, and around 154 times the allowed amount in the, oh no, did I say Pfizer? I'm sorry, I meant Moderna. In Moderna it was 628 times the allowed amount, and in Pfizer it's 154 times the allowed amount. I need very much to also tell you that Pfizer did their clinical trials with a clean PCR product template. In other words, like I've been saying many times, they used the PCR amplification process to do their trials, and then they switched over to E. coli, which uses the bacterium E. coli and plasmids to generate copies of mRNA, which they put into their commercial product and never tested. Excuse me, I'm bleeding a lot and swallowing blood, and it's starting to make me sick. Excuse me. I might have to run to the bathroom in a minute and get rid of this blood. I'm sorry, everybody. But I'm going to persevere and get this done for everyone. So anyway, no clinical trial was conducted on the marketed product for Pfizer. That means they had no idea what all these horrible contaminations and SV40 promoters and enhancers would do. They just injected it into the public, which to me is just incredibly, I don't know what word I should use for this, but it just shows a total disregard for human life, and it upsets me very much. It would have cost them only $1 billion to get rid of the DNA impurities with DNase, I've heard, when they made $138 billion the first year, and could have easily spent $1 billion of that profit to make sure the public didn't get damaged in some horrible way from all these impurities. Now, I just want to say this also, because you may not understand the way I'm explaining it. The SV40 promoters and enhancers are not part of the impurities. They're in the plasmids. They were put in the plasmid without Pfizer telling the FDA. The impurities are the loose plasmids and even linear pieces of plasmid DNA that are in the vials. And of course it was not tested in the public, and it's just so upsetting to hear that when you give a large corporation, especially a big pharma corporation, blanket immunity, they're going to cut some corners which are going to cause some horrible side effects and diseases in the public. Which can really cause some horrible outcomes in the people that trusted them to make these vaccines. And here's 9 pages of the most horrible things you've ever heard in your life, including large clots in the ventricles of your heart. Can you imagine having a baseball-sized clot in the ventricle of your heart? We need to end blanket immunity for large pharma, for big pharma. And if they don't want to make vaccines anymore, fine. Vaccines are among the most lucrative products that pharma sells to the public. As you know, $138 billion on the COVID vaccines. So please join me and push our government to stop blanket immunity for Big Pharma for any liability that can arise out of the use of their products. And by the way, I'll say this later, I think it's going to come up again, but let me just say it now. Eric was talking about, well, let me say it later when it's more relevant. Okay, so let me just let this continue on. And there you have it. It's horrible stuff.
Principally around the SV40 promoter enhancer origin sequences, as well as the detectable amounts of DNA fragments. I would like to point out that the FDA limit of 10 nanograms was set for naked DNA, not DNA in the presence of lipid nanoparticles that can carry DNA into cells and their nuclei. Next slide.
Okay, I should have mentioned this before, but this is very relevant. He's talking about a 628-fold increase over what's allowed by the FDA. And in that case, he's talking about free fragments that are in the blood, not that are protected by the lipid nanoparticles. When you consider the protection by the lipid nanoparticles, it's actually much, much worse. Because the lipid nanoparticle can take it from the syringe that you're getting injected with the vaccine with, all the way to the cell.
So to summarize the DNA impurities, both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been found to contain DNA that exceeds the FDA limits. Importantly, the DNA impurity limits do not take into account lipid nanoparticles, which carry DNA into cells and nuclei. There are concerns due to known DNA integration and gene activation disruption by SV40 promoter enhancer sequences. Next slide. There has not been a reliable or really any population study in the United States with cancer outcomes after COVID vaccination, but cancers have been reported in mRNA vaccinated individuals in temporal association to immunization. Actually, the number should be 48 case reports that are listed below.
Okay, I'm going to stop here because Dr. Aldiri is going to talk about a bunch of cancers that have been associated temporally, which means in time, with getting the vaccine. And I did a couple of podcasts with Dr. Harvey Reid, who is professor emeritus at Yale for epidemiology. And it was they were very good podcasts because basically what they amounted to was me presenting a possibility for the etiology of why these vaccines could be causing cancer. They certainly were associated with it temporarily. And Dr. Reid, who was a very, very smart doctor, telling me basically the same answer on every one. Sure, what you're saying is logical, but we don't know yet if that is the etiology behind why all these cancers are appearing. And I must have come up with 13 or 14 possible etiologies, mechanisms for the causing of the cancer. And we became friends, and it was a very good discussion we had about this, which is a major, major problem that I think Eric and Sam are just neglecting. These vaccines damage the immune system. They may be, we know they're associated with cancer temporarily, but if they're cause if they're the cause of cancer, that's a whole different level. And we don't know that yet. People will study this to the hilt, I'm sure. We already know about IgG4 after several boosters. Again, it gets worse after each booster, and Dr. Topol is saying that after 2 months you don't have to worry about anything anymore, which is wrong. Again, I have promised myself that I will prove every claim that I make, and the ones that I can't claim, the ones that I can't prove, I will not claim. Let me put it that way. And there may or may not be a causative association, a cause and effect association with these vaccines, but we don't know yet. So please bear that in mind. That should be figured into whether or not you should get a vaccine for atypical pneumonia. Now, I'm not poo-pooing atypical pneumonia. I certainly don't want to get it. And the older I get, the more likely it would be to do me in. But I'm just trying to tell you that atypical pneumonia is what COVID-19 is. It was that from the very beginning. And here's yet another problem with the vaccines. And you can see that a lot of these are case reports. Case reports are just reports of the illness in the person that's presented in a grand rounds or a morbidity and mortality report that a residence patient at the hospital had, and he's presenting it to the older doctors, and they're going to talk about it a lot and so forth. And we don't know the cause of a lot of these things. So we are looking heavily into it, I'm sure. Dr. Bhattacharya is probably funding this now over at NIH. And bless him. He's a very smart leader of the NIH, and I'm very happy that he got that great appointment. But someone will get to the bottom of this at some point, and we will know more. But let's not all jump in and get the vaccines. Now, by the way, Dr. Bhattacharya is very pro-vaccine and even pro-mask for a while. Now, I worked on changing him over to it, and people called it talking him off the ledge. But so, everyone has a different opinion. I have tremendous respect for the people that I've been able to speak to about this, including Sam and Dr. Topol, but I think they're really off on this issue of the vaccine. It really bothers me, the conclusions they're coming to. I don't think they're valid. So anyway, let's continue, and we'll stop this video now and get back to a contagion of bad ideas, according to Sam.